At some point in your life, you have watched someone pick up a skill that took you months to develop, and they did it in what felt like days. Maybe it was a foreign language, a complex musical instrument, or a high-level technical discipline. You struggled through the material for weeks, while they seemed to absorb it almost effortlessly like a sponge. When we witness this, most of us reach a painful and self-limiting conclusion. That person is just smarter than me. They were born with a gift I don't have. Intelligence is just a lottery, and I didn't win. But what if I told you that conclusion is fundamentally wrong? The evidence that it's wrong has been sitting in neurobiology research labs and in the private journals of history's most extraordinarily productive people for centuries. The difference between the person who learns in days and the person who takes months is not cognitive horsepower. It is method. Specifically, it is a set of techniques for acquiring, encoding, and retrieving information that the modern educational system was never designed to teach you. Our schools were designed to deliver content, to produce obedient participants for an industrial society. Today, we are going to break down the exact methods used by the top 1% who build skills at a rate that looks unrealistic to the outside world. Let's start with the single biggest mistake that almost everyone makes, and it's likely accounting for 80% of your wasted learning time. Most people approach learning as a process of input. You read a book, you watch a tutorial, you highlight text, or you listen to a lecture. The underlying assumption is that if you put information into your head, learning happens. The more you consume, the more you know. From a neuroscientific standpoint, this is almost entirely false. Your brain is not a hard drive where files are stored and accessed. It is a biological network of connections that only strengthen through active use. The specific act that encodes information into your long-term memory, making it durable and accessible, is not the act of receiving information. It is the act of retrieving it. This is known as the testing effect or retrieval practice. A landmark study by Jeffrey Karpik at Purdue University found that students who studied material once and then spent the rest of their time testing themselves, trying to recall what they'd learned, without looking at the book, retained dramatically more after a week than students who spent all their time rereading. Here is the psychological trap. The students who were rereading reported feeling like they were learning more. Familiarity produces a false sense of competence. But the students who struggled to retrieve the information were the ones whose neural pathways were actually being rewired. The 1% of learners universally prioritize retrieval over review. They close the book, they hide the notes, and they force their brain to reconstruct the concept from scratch. If it doesn't feel like a struggle, you aren't learning. You're just consuming. The second method involves how you actually spend your practice time. Most people practice what they are already good at. If you're learning a language, you repeat the phrases you know. If you're a programmer, you write the code that feels familiar. This feels productive because it's smooth and error-free. But doing things you're already good at is not practice. It's a demonstration of existing skill. Elite performers use a method called deliberate practice. Documented by researcher Anders Ericsson, this involves identifying the precise edge of your current capability. This is the boundary where your performance begins to break down, where errors appear, and where uncertainty lives. Imagine a circle. Inside the circle is everything you can do perfectly. Outside is everything that is impossible for you. The edge is the thin line between the two. The 1% spend 90% of their time working exactly on that line. This is deeply uncomfortable. It feels from the inside like you are failing constantly. However, your brain is a survival organ. It does not adapt to challenges it can already handle easily. It only adapts when it receives a signal that the current environment is demanding more than it can currently give. That signal is the friction of failure. Most people encounter this friction and think, I'm not good at this. The elite learner encounters it and thinks, this is where the growth is. Then there is the issue of timing. The standard approach to learning is cramming or massed practice. You spend 5 hours on a Sunday trying to master a topic. By the end of the session, the information feels solid, but 3 weeks later, it's almost entirely gone. You assume you just didn't study hard enough. The problem wasn't your intensity, it was your timing. The brain's memory consolidation system is biological, and it requires time to harden a memory. The German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered the forgetting curve, the rate at which we lose new information. He also discovered the antidote, spaced repetition. Memories that are retrieved just as they are beginning to fade are encoded much more durably than memories retrieved while they are still fresh. If you study something and then review it 10 minutes later, you are essentially photocopying a document that is already in front of you. It's a waste of energy. But if you wait until you've almost forgotten it, say 2 days later, and then force your brain to pull it back from the brink of oblivion, the brain receives a powerful signal. This information is necessary for survival. Store it deeper. The elite learners of history, from Benjamin Franklin to modern polymaths, never cram. They use strategically timed intervals. They allow for the forgetting to happen because they know that the harder the retrieval, the more permanent the memory. There are 2 final layers to this architecture. The first is interleaving. Most people learn in blocks, mastering topic A before moving to topic B. But research shows that mixing topics, practicing different types of problems in a single session, leads to far better long-term retention. This is why polymaths like Leonardo da Vinci could move between anatomy, engineering, and painting. Interleaving forces the brain to not just learn a solution, but to learn how to choose the right solution for a specific problem. The second is the Feynman Technique. Named after the physicist Richard Feynman, this is the ultimate test of understanding. Feynman believed that if you couldn't explain a concept in simple language to a 6-year-old, you didn't actually understand it. Most people mistake familiarity for understanding. You read a paragraph and it makes sense, so you think you know it. But you only know the words. You don't know the idea. The Feynman technique requires you to take a concept and explain it simply without using jargon. The moment your explanation breaks down, the moment you reach for a big word to cover up a gap, you have found your knowledge gap. The 1% are relentlessly honest about these gaps. They don't paper over them. They go back to the material, fill the specific hole, and try the explanation again. They rebuild their knowledge from first principles, ensuring there are no weak bricks in their foundation. If you look at everything we've discussed, retrieval over review, deliberate discomfort, strategic spacing, interleaving, and the Feynman technique, they all share one common thread: discomfort. The reason most people never reach the level of the 1% is not because these methods are secret or complicated. It is because they feel worse than the alternatives. Rereading feels good, retrieval feels like a struggle, practicing what you know feels like progress, practicing at your edge feels like failure, cramming feels like mastery, spacing feels like forgetting. The brain, being an organ that seeks to conserve energy, will always choose the comfortable path unless you give it a reason not to. The 1% understand that the discomfort is the signal. It is the feeling of neural pathways being forged. They have reframed the struggle as the goal itself. The question for you is not whether you have the intelligence to learn fast. The question is whether you are willing to trade the feeling of learning for the reality of it. If you can embrace the friction, the timelines that currently astonish you will soon become your new normal. In the next video, we're going to look at the other side of this coin, the neuroscience of focus. Because even the best methods in the world will fail if your attention is fragmented. Until then, stop reviewing and start retrieving.